Lena. Hope y'all doing good tonight. It's gonna be a good one. Make sure you share, like, follow, tell all your friends, text them this link, get them on tonight. It's my last night tonight. Let's go. Hope y'all dancing. Hey, Jay. Ooh, y'all better be grooving. Tonight we got a good show for y'all. Make sure y'all again share, like, follow, get everybody you know to come in because we have Pamela Winn coming in tonight. Hey, Brian. Hi, Patricia. Hope you're in your house dancing. Yes, Lena. Turn it up. Pamela gonna join me to dance, y'all. Ooh. All right. And again, today we have Miss Pamela Winn. All right, you didn't get the opportunity to dance, but that's all right. You can still groove a little bit.
Be here.
Good, good, good. How are you today?
I'm well. I'm great. I'm healthy. Can't ask for nothing else.
That's
and even
right.
if you complain, nobody's listening.
That's true. That's what they say. I hear that a lot. But I'm happy you listening today because I am. And so are all of our great freedom followers. So everyone, today we have Miss Pamela Winn. Again, I'm keep saying her name because I don't want you to forget it when we get off this call. And she is an awesome woman to end this month on with all the amazing women that we've had. She is just fills my heart anytime I think about the work that she's doing for women in the South. So also, she passed a very important bill that we will get into later on in this conversation. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. My name is Pamela Winn. I am an AT alien from right here in the Big GA, where we made history and turned things blue, shook it up this presidential election.
Hey, I wore blue just for you today.
So I'm very proud of my home state for that. I am the founder of RestoreHer. I'm a co-founder of the formerly Incarcerated Graduates Network. I created the Dignity Leadership Alliance. I wear a lot of hats. I do a lot of things. I'm not going to bore you with all the titles and all the things that I do. But the most important thing that you need to know about me is that I don't take no for an answer. And when it comes to things that are important to me that I have a passion about, and that's about my people and the treatment of my people, I go hard in the paint and I don't stop till I get it done.
Okay, talk about it. I love that. You just got me excited. Okay, so let's talk about what RestoreHer means. Like you said, you're the founder of RestoreHer. Tell us what that means.
RestoreHer is a policy advocacy reentry nonprofit organization. What we do is we address the social determinants of criminalization. And for people that don't understand what that means that we just basically fight for reproductive justice, dignity, and leadership of justice impacted women that have been formerly incarcerated, that are currently incarcerated, they have convictions but have never seen the inside of a cell, and women that are affected by trauma. So we work with these ladies to enhance their lives, and then we partner with them to change laws and to, just improve conditions for us population of women here in the South.
Okay, so you doing all this great work for these women, and you putting yourself out there to be open to really tell your story and help these women tell their story and function in this society that we living in right now. So
Right.
can you tell us a little bit about your story? Have you ever been incarcerated?
Yes, ma'am. So, like I said, I'm from Atlanta, which means I'm from the South. So I come from what you call a typical Southern Black family, which means no money, low income, and uneducated. I
Mm-hmm.
was the first person out of my family to graduate high school and to continue on, graduate college, and to own a business, become an entrepreneur. That was something that I had always aspired to do as a kid, because I understood the dynamics of my generation and I wanted to change that. I didn't want us to
Yes.
be known for that. So having accomplished all that, I was a nurse. I was a registered nurse. Have over 15 years of professional experience. Attended Spelman. So basically, I set the bar high for myself
Mm-hmm.
and I accomplished those things. So I was like at the peak of my life, feeling on top of the world. Like everything I aspired for, I had done. And then it all came crashing down. Because again, I am the first person in my family to own a business. So
Mm-hmm.
people that came from where I came from didn't own a business. So when I was having issues with my business, I didn't have anyone that I could go to get help. So I did what I had known to do all my life, which was figure it out myself.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, what I figured out was not correct. And it landed me with a 78-month federal prison sentence for a white collar crime. And during my incarceration, I was also pregnant. And I was shackled
Mm-hmm.
when I would be transported in and out of the facility back and forth to court. Shackling caused me to fall. I fell. I didn't receive medical care. I ended up miscarrying my baby. And
Oh.
then I was placed in solitary confinement, on top of that.
Mm.
The whole process of the miscarriage was like when I fell, there was no check me out, make sure I was okay. It was scoop me up, put me on the van, and keep it moving to court. I get back, still no medical treatment. Nobody looks at me. I send in medical requests because I'm starting to spot, I'm starting to bleed. I know that I'm having issues. For over 2 weeks, they went unanswered. Finally, I get an answer and they tell me that that's normal with pregnancy. So I respond back and kind of throw my titles at them,
Mm-hmm.
and say, no, ma'am, this is not normal. My background, my medical background is women's health. So
Right.
nothing normal about this. So at that point, they brought me to medical. The woman that was the director, as well as the doctor that was contracting with the facility, we had the same colleagues. So out of respect, they were just straight up honest with me, and they just blatantly told me this facility was made for men. We didn't expect to have women. Definitely didn't expect to have a pregnant woman. There's nothing that we can do for you. We have nothing here. So the only thing that they could do for me was to send a request to the marshals, because
Mm-hmm.
where I was at this time, I had not been sentenced or convicted. So I was being held at a holding facility that contracted with the feds. It was a
Mm-hmm.
private prison. And so they couldn't move without the approval of the U.S. Marshals. So they had to send a request and wait for approval to take me. Well, they did the request to take me to the ER. The
Mm-hmm.
turnaround time for the approval was 4 weeks. So
What?
now yes. So we're talking about nearly 8 weeks now So when I get to the ER, they're looking at us like we got 50 heads, because they like, yo, this was 8 weeks ago. It's not an emergency anymore. You know, she needs an obstetrician or a perinatologist. So they were like, we got to send in another request. So it was another 4 weeks we had to wait. I saw an obstetrician, but all she could say was that she needed an ultrasound to check the status of my baby. So that was another request, another 4 weeks. When I got the ultrasound, it was done by a medical technician, not a radiologist. So they couldn't read it or tell me anything. So that was another appointment. So in that last 4 weeks of waiting, is when I miscarried. So the way that the facility was made, we had like a large common area, and then we had cells. Every night at 10 o'clock, we would be locked into the cells. There were no call buttons or anything like that. So, you know, unless the officer came around and checked, you know, you were just locked in.
Is that a normal thing? Is that normally how it is? Like, there's no way you can contact them or call them, like if you need some help or anything, you just in there, no assistance, especially after what you just went through.
Right. So at this facility, there was not. I'm not sure about other places, because once I finally got to a federal facility, it was very open. You know, I could go walk, you know, do whatever I needed to do. But at this holding place, that's how it was set up. So then the water fountain was spouting out brown water. So they were supposed to bring us in fresh water every day. Most days they didn't, because it depended on the officer if they wanted to do it or not. This particular day I hadn't drank anything all day. And so once they locked us in, I started cramping, and I knew it was probably because I was dehydrated. So I started drinking water out of a sink that's connected to a toilet, which, to give you an idea of how desperate I am right now to get some fluids in me, because otherwise it was like, I ain't, you know, that's just like drinking the brown water out the water fountain. But you know, now it's urgent, so I'm concerned about the health of my baby. So I'm drinking the water. Cramps got worse. I decided to lay down and go to sleep, and hope when I woke up, you know, we would have fresh water, ice, whatever inside the pod. Well, I got waking up because now my cramps had turned into contractions. So I got back up. I'm at the sink again, trying to drink as much water as I could. I feel a warm gush between my legs, but there are no lights in the cell. There's nothing. So it's just black. You can't see anything. And so I didn't know what it was, but I knew it wasn't good. So I just laid back down, you know, squeezed my legs together, hoping that someone would come around soon to check on us. There was a young lady in the room with me. You know, the pain got kind of intense, and you know, I started to moan out. So I woke her up, and she asked me what was going on. So I told her. I remember her going to the crack of the door and screaming out to the other ladies that there was something wrong with me and my baby, and we needed to get help. And I could hear all the ladies beating on the door, screaming, doing everything to try to get anybody to come. When somebody finally came, it was after 2 in the morning. And when they opened the door, that gush that I felt, it was blood, and it was blood all over their entire cell. So of course now I'm afraid, I'm scared, I'm worried about not only my baby's life, my life, and what they were doing. They were debating if they should call the marshals or if they should call 911. I literally had to beg and plead with them to just go ahead and call 911 and get me out of there. When I get to the hospital, the marshals meet me at the door and automatically shackle me to the bed by my ankles, by my ankle and my arm. That's how I endured the remainder of my miscarriage. And on top of that, I had 2 male officers in between my legs that refused to leave the room, or even just, you know, my nurse asked them would they just step to the side to another part of the room. They said no. That was very embarrassing, very dehumanizing. Finally, when I stopped bleeding enough that they could do an ultrasound, they told me that I had passed my baby, and it wasn't in the bed with me. So they were asking the officers, where is the linen that she bled on? And they were like, oh, we threw it in the trash. And I just remember my nurse being very upset, like her baby was there. You threw her baby in the trash. I just kept hearing her say that. And even as many times as I told my story, when I say that, just and how I felt then, to think that a part of me, something that was mine, my baby, was just thrown in the trash, and the way that they said that they threw it in the trash was like that's how they really felt about my baby.
Right.
It was trash. And then right after that, they put me in solitary confinement. So now in solitary, I'm just replaying that moment,
Oh my
that time
goodness.
over and over and over and over in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And, all I could think about is the shame and the guilt, that I felt, because I felt responsible for my baby being thrown in the trash because I had put myself in that predicament. Um, there was no counseling, there was no nothing. I was just pretty much on my own. I stayed in solitary for almost right at 8 months before I was finally sentenced and designated to a federal facility, and was taken there. The only thing that really kept me going, besides the grace of God, is that I had a 14 and a 16-year-old at home, my
Mm-hmm.
sons, and I didn't have support. So they were literally at home alone, taking care of themselves. So on top of everything I was going through, I was in there every day praying and hoping that nobody, would come by the house and find out that they're there alone. And
Right.
so, if nothing else, for them, I knew I had to keep it together and, make through my situation. But, and then coming home, trying to get some kind of resolve for all the injustice that I endured when I was away, I was told repeatedly,
But
sorry,
one
there's
second
nothing.
before you move there, let's take a step back. One, I do know this is going to be a continuing interview. We may run a little late, so I hope y'all stick with us because this is some serious and important information that we're getting here tonight. So y'all gonna bear with us. So let's take a step back to before you got out. When you got out of solitary, what happened? Like, did you go back to your cell after you moved to the new facility? How long were you at that facility before you got released? And where were your emotions and your feelings placed? Because there's so much, and yes, by having faith, you still gotta deal with those emotions. Like,
Right.
where did that go? Where did you
Okay.
find the strength to move forward there
All right.
or
So when
balance?
I came out of solitary, I was sentenced and designated. So coming out of solitary, they took me straight to the airport, put me on what they call Con Air, and flew me to Florida, which is where I started serving my time at Coleman, Florida. I was at a camp there, so it was very open. So like I say, no locked doors, no cells, no none of that. I could
Okay.
move freely, do whatever I wanted to do, there, just not leave the grounds.
Hmm.
Um, I was there for 2 years or so, and then I was taken to Alderson, West Virginia. Um, that was like that's the first federal prison for women, like Billie Holiday and you know those type of people
Wow.
had been incarcerated there. It has a lot of history. I was taken there until I was released home. Um, and what else did you ask me about? Oh, my feelings. How did I
Right.
deal? Okay, so growing up, my mother had a drug addiction. My mother was in and out of prison. So I pretty much raised myself, and I had a younger brother of 4 years. Um, my mom lost everything we had, and we were kind of like homeless. During that time, I lost my virginity to a rape, and
Mm.
that's where I kind of learned how to just cut off, myself from things. And it's come in handy throughout my life. So with dealing with the situation about my baby, like even when the sexual assault happened, I didn't have time to focus on what had just happened to me because I had my brother somewhere waiting on me, and I had to figure out where we were going to sleep at that night. So that's how I deal with the stuff. That's how I dealt with it in there. It was like I don't have time to sit in what just happened with me with my baby because I got two other babies out there, waiting on a phone call from me.
Right.
Um, that type of thing. And then when I'm inside, it's like you don't have time to think about that because you got to exist in here. You got to make it up out of here. You got to get back home. So there's always something else that I feel like is a bigger priority than sitting in, what I actually had going on. And so that's how I do it. I just compartmentalize, put it to the side. And even coming home, I never, once I got home, it was about where I'm going to live, find a job. It was just so it's always other things going on that you don't have time to go back and dwell on anything. And it wasn't until one day I was doing an interview like I'm doing now, and somebody asked me, how did I feel about what happened to my baby? And that's when I'd never taken the time to even feel anything other than when I talk about it and I think about the trash part. That's the most time or thought I given to it, because there was always something else, or I always put something else in front of it to keep me going and not focus on what I had.
Well, I think that it's very important to, talk about, because then you kind of releasing those things that was pushed down. So I really do appreciate you sharing that with us tonight. So when you got home, this is gonna roll into how RestoreHer came along.
Yep.
So when you got home and your boys were there, did they have any resentment towards you that made it hard for you to move forward, or did you feel as though you failed them in a way that would make it hard to move forward, or you automatically was like, you know what, I gotta just get a job, get it right, and then we can handle that?
No, I automatically felt like a failure. The first day that they arrested me and took me away, I felt like a failure. Because remember, my dream was to change the whole dynamics of my upbringing. And now here I was leaving my kids, like my mom had left me something I had promised myself as a kid I would never do to my kids. And although it wasn't intentional, I still did it. So yes, I felt like a failure. I still feel that, that's something, it doesn't go away. I carry that with me. I carry the shame and guilt of failing my sons. They're both doing great. They're doing well. But I always think to myself, they could have been doing so much better had I been here with them. And you know what I'm saying? So it never goes away. I have to just tell myself or remind myself, like I have friends that tell me, I've been here with my kids, never went anywhere, and they're not doing as well as your kids. So you can't, keep dwelling on that. So that's what I kind of tell myself when I get to feeling like that. As far as them having resentment, they never voiced anything to me. I tried to get them to, because I knew that they had to feel a way, but they were always very protective of me and how I felt. Like even to this day, when like my younger son does speak, he does do my work with me, and he'll speak, and it's like every time he speaks, I learn something new, because a lot of things they didn't tell me because they didn't want me to feel, as bad or worse than I had already felt. But I always try to encourage them to just tell me, because what I don't want for them is for them to just push things down like I do.
That is wonderful. It sounds like you have some great boys, and in my opinion, I think that that's a great upbringing. Even if you weren't there, they seen something in you that they needed to keep on going with that. So I applaud you for that as
Thank
well.
you.
Okay. So now we got that out the way and we know your history and know a little bit more about you. How did that experience bring you to RestoreHer?
So RestoreHer came about because when I got home and I was going to speak to different people about trying to getting some resolve for what I had went through, part of I wanted resolve, but I also wanted to forget it and just move on with my life and let it be a nightmare. But the more I tried to get the resolve, the more I was told there was nothing that I could do. People were telling me that, it was beyond statute of limitations, and, that Georgia had been working on shackling laws for over 10 years and could never get anywhere with it. And so all of the no's is what really kind of pissed me off. And I was like, okay, I don't do no well. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And so so I was like, okay, y'all can't do anything. And that's what I would tell them. Don't
Mm-hmm.
tell me no, and there's nothing I could do. Just say you couldn't do anything.
Right.
Because that's not my
I know
story.
that's right.
So I started my organization. I put out a petition with change.org.
Mm-hmm.
It got over 100,000 signatures in less than a
Mm.
month. At the time, Senator Booker, Kamala Harris, and now Vice President Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren had a bill called the Dignity for Incarcerated Women Act. It was a federal bill. And he saw the petition and he came on and he made a statement on my petition. He got in touch with change.org, wanted to meet me, and brought me to DC to work on that legislation with him. So that is how my work began. Of course,
Okay.
that bill didn't go anywhere because they knew they were going to be on the next presidential ticket and they
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to give them a win. So that was my first lesson in politics. They put politics before the people.
Mm-hmm.
So people need to know that politics comes before the people. So they're worried about a win instead of worrying about the importance of this legislation. So that
Mm-hmm.
bill didn't go anywhere, but that didn't stop me. I ended up meeting Jessica Jackson and Van Jones. At the time, their organization was Cut 50. They were working with Booker also. So I kind of partnered with them. I came back home, met with people that had been working on the legislation here to find out what worked, what didn't work, and I went from there. And so the biggest thing that I think that was the turning point for me that got my bill passed was when the sheriffs stood up to testify in the committee hearing to say that they didn't shackle women. I was able to stand up and say, yes, you do. You
Right.
shackled me. And so up until this point, I don't think they ever had anyone that was there to speak their story and speak their truth. Because the
Mm.
legislators looked at me and they were like, where, was this? Where did this happen? And da 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 da. And not only that, I had mobilized the women inside and I had
Mm.
all of them email me their experience. And
Right.
so,
Yes.
yes, so when I told them, so this was when I passed the bill, it was 2019. When this happened to me, it was 2008. And so I told the legislators, this happened to me in 2008. And I had a handful of emails that I dropped on the table. I said, but this is happening to all of these women now. So this is not an isolated thing. It's 11 years it's been
Mm-hmm.
going on. And so I shoved all the emails to them. I was like, read them, and they were sitting there. So they couldn't deny it. The sheriff was just
Right.
standing there. There was nothing he could say. And I think that was what pushed it over the edge, the fact that I had lived experience. And so that's important for me in my narrative. When I'm doing this work, people with the lived experience are the people that can inform these policies and make these changes that need to be made, because you can't expect legislators or organizations that are not directly impacted to do these things, because they don't know. They know what
Right.
they heard, they know what they think, but the best people to lead are the people who experienced it.
That's right. I truly believe that. One thing I'm really getting out of what you're saying is, if ain't nobody gonna fight for you, you got to fight for yourself.
Exactly.
And I think that we all forget that at times,
Hmm.
and we get in a situation we're like, oh, okay, that's all right. And then we come back and it's like, I should have said this or I should have done this, versus taking that risk and being like, I am more important for my future. I am more important than this person saying no to me, especially when it's so important as the
Yeah.
work that you're doing. Um, so for my last question, because we're gonna definitely have to continue this interview some other time, but I do want to know how you have impacted women that you've met and how they feel about what you're doing right now.
So I have impacted women. So I have federal legislation. If you're familiar with the First Step Act, all of the language in the First Step Act written about women, I wrote that. So women in federal prison don't have to go through what I went through anymore. Then I passed the bill here in Georgia, HB 345, that bans shackling and solitary confinement here in Georgia, so they don't go through it at my home. And then just yesterday, we passed SB 105, which is about probation reform. So once it's signed into law by Governor Kemp, any person, if you're sentenced to 30 years on probation, if you've been on probation 3 years, you haven't got in trouble, and you paid your restitution, you can get off, no matter how much time you have on probation.
Nice.
And that's very important because, here in Georgia, you can vote if you're off paper. So if you're on probation and parole, you can vote. So this means, so when he strokes that pen, we have over 56,000 people that are eligible to get off
Oh,
probation. And that'll be 56,000 people, new voters that
yes.
we have that can vote.
Oh, that is awesome.
And
That
from
is
my understanding from Van, I think Van told me the last time we checked, over 30,000 women have been impacted, and not by the shackling legislation that I've done.
wow. That I know that feel good. Like,
It
yes,
does
like
feel
it was
good.
working.
It feel great, because all I think about is when they kept telling me, no, you can't do that, and this is too late for that. And now I can tell them, the hell you say,
Okay, I'm like, come on, get it all in their face. Like, look what I
yes,
got.
the hell you say. I don't, ain't none of my women, over 30,000 of my women ain't got to deal with that no more.
Right, right. I love you. I can't say it enough. You are just an awesome woman. And before
Thank
I
you.
met you, I felt that way. You are really, really, really the person I'm happy I got to speak with for my last interview, standing in for Jay. But I will be talking to you again, so we can go more in depth about Restore Her and the work that you're doing for the South and some of the organizations you work with, to let everyone know what it's really about, and also if anybody who has been incarcerated and have experienced this can also kind of chime in and have some conversations as well with you. So,
Definitely.
do you have any final words that you would like to say?
We have another bill that we're working on. It's called the Women's Care Act. CARE is an acronym for childbirth, alternatives, resources, and education. So although we passed legislation, and I've been a part of passing the shackling legislation, Georgia, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Florida, Connecticut, Kentucky, I've been busy. And right now, Alabama and North Carolina have the bill in session. Even though, we've gotten everybody on board about the shackling, they still are shackling the women. They still are placing the women in solitary. So what the Women's Care Act does is it takes them out the prison, period. So this bill will, if you go out and you get arrested and you can't bond out and you sit there 3 days, they have to give you a pregnancy test. If your test is positive, you automatically get to bond out. No questions. And then when you go back to court, if you're convicted and you're sentenced to serve time, you don't come back to serve that time until 12 weeks after you have your baby.
Wow.
Because, yes, so I'm like, that's the next step. The first step
Yes.
is to stop shackling them and putting them in solitary. The next step is to get them the hell out of there. So
Exactly.
this
Yes.
session, we were able to, we passed the committee hearing, we passed rules, we made it to we're making it to the House. We ran out of time though, because the session ends on Wednesday. So next year we'll pick up where we left off. So next
Right.
year we'll be celebrating that we don't have any pregnant women in the prison.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing and having well, we having y'all here tonight and me and Jay having you here. So we just want to
Thank you
thank
for inviting me. I really appreciate this. I thank you for the opportunity to uplift the voices of my women and let people know that they're out there. This is Women's History Month. They are part of women's history as well.
Yes, yes. So if
And
y'all
I
want to
just
look her
gave
up,
you love to
make
shout
sure you
them
look
out.
at www.restoreher.us. Make sure you look her up. Thank you. Have a good
Thank
night.
you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. If you want to donate, you can look at the sign over on the chat to donate.
I woke up like, hey, I really don't like the way life's going these days. No, gotta switch it up, make it right, cause I'm getting tired. Hey. And even though I'm blessed,
Dance the night away.
I'm feeling like I need a change. No, time to make you move, go and get your breakthrough. So what you feeling like? Get up, turn on the light, time to make it right. This is your new life.
Thank you, everybody. I will see you next time. Thank you for having me this month. Peace.
Drive me crazy. I don't wanna live like this. I can barely get by.